They're really looking for partners that will stand by them if they make any more strategic pivots as they continue to restructure. I mean, how effectively ManTech can utilize their relationships will be one of the biggest factors in whether they can move beyond just providing legacy services and capitalizing on this demand for emerging technologies.
Welcome to TBR Talks, decoding strategies and ecosystems of the globe's top tech firms, where we talk business model disruption in the broad technology ecosystem, from management consultancies to systems integrators, hyperscalers to independent software vendors, telecom operators to network and infrastructure vendors, and chip manufacturers to value-added resellers. We'll be answering some of the key intelligence questions we've heard from executives and business unit leaders among the leading professional IT services and telecom vendors. I'm Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst, and today we'll be talking about Peraton, ManTech, and private equity with James Wichert, Analyst for TBR's Federal IT Services Practice. James, excellent to see you. Thanks for coming on the podcast again. Really appreciate it. And we're going to chat about Peraton and ManTech today, two companies that you know really well. And in reading some of the reports that you've written on these companies, you've said in the reports that maximizing execution on existing bookings and securing key recompetes are essentially the two most critical aspects to successfully running a federal IT company, so a federal U.S. federal focused IT services company. So thinking about Peraton first, have they been exceptionally good at executing and on recompeting, or are they just exceptionally good at piecing together components, large components like Perspecta, like part of Northrop Grumman?
So that's a great question. John and I have really been hammering home in our reports and in our discussions with clients over the last year that the federal IT market is rapidly changing, and how incumbency, which has traditionally played a key role in predicting who will win a recompete, it's becoming less of a decisive factor. Like you just said, execution on existing bookings and not fumbling key recompetes, they're essential, certainly if you're going to be successful. So, for example, Jacobs Technology was the incumbent on the Special Operations Forces IT Enterprise contract. Bidding for the third iteration happened last year, and they wound up losing this nearly $3 billion opportunity to Peraton. And now, Peraton obviously had a solid proposal, but it also later comes out that Jacobs accidentally included classified information in its presentation, which, as you'd expect, played a prominent role in the U.S. Special Operations Command's decision to not go with the incumbent. I think it's one of the biggest examples we've seen of why you can't risk complacency. It's common sense, yeah, but it's just the way things are right now. And there are plenty of vendors with scale out there jockeying for opportunities, and they're ready to take your place, especially as the federal IT market begins to slow down. Now, has Peraton been exceptionally good at recompeting and executing? They have been doing good. They recently won a position on the Defense Manpower Data Centers, Defense Enterprise HR Applications, and Data Services contract vehicle, but they've also made mistakes, like they lost the $1 billion IT GEMS recompetes Deloitte in 1Q24. Of the vendors I cover, though, I would still say they're one of the better vendors when it comes to recompetes and execution. And I think it's not unrealistic to say that they could generate over $8 billion in revenue this year. What they've really excelled at is certainly piecing together everything so quickly. So zooming out, Peraton was established as this private entity when Veritas Capital purchased Harris Corp's government IT services branch. They made some additional moves, and by 2020, were generating roughly $1 billion in annual revenue. But then they engaged in some really ambitious M&A activity in 2021 to become what they are now, and they suddenly septupled. They septupled their revenue by purchasing federal IT vendor Perspecta, the IT services operations through Northrop Grumman business units, and Vion's cloud operations. Peraton spent 2022 optimizing its operations and maximizing the synergies derived from these new assets. And looking at 2022, Peraton had cut its post-merger headcount by 25% in that time frame. And then by the end of 2023, it was just clear that Peraton had actually managed to become this really homogeneous entity. Things seem to be humming along. They recently appointed a new CEO, and the acquisitions really expanded Peraton's footprint from providing mission-centric technology for cybersecurity, intelligence, and space applications. They're not perfect. They have made some costly fumbles here and there, like that $1 billion IT GEMS loss, but they are a thorn in many tier one vendor sides, and they should remain one for years to come.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You brought up a few things I want to circle back to. You made a comment about the Fed IT market slowing down. You talked about ambitious M&A activity. I think it's really fascinating. And no one has ever on this podcast that I can recall, Haley can correct me later if I'm wrong, said something septupled. So that's it's good to get out there. And also it seems like a company that was stitched together through private equity and through a bunch of acquisitions to be able to come around in a short amount of time to really operating as one company is it's impressive. I mean, there was some real solid leadership there. So let's shift to ManTech. They made an acquisition this year. They launched a digital transformation consulting practice. I have never, in the time that I've worked at TBR, thought about ManTech as anything like Booz Allen Hamilton, but maybe I should. Will they be able to, with consulting, the key is talent. Will they be able to recruit the talent they need to boost AI consulting opportunities, to land real consulting engagements? Where are they going?
Well, I mean, first off, I don't think anyone can beat Booz Allen Hamilton, at least right now.
Yeah.
They're exceptionally well run and really are the AI leaders in federal IT. And that comes from Booz Allen putting AI at the forefront of their strategy years and years ago. So competitors are going to have to lean hard on their partners, aggressively make R&D investments, as well as leverage M&A activity if they really want to close that gap. But ManTech is definitely trying to shift gears with Carlyle's financial backing. They were taken private. It's like the fall of 2022. And part of this shift is making consulting a real focus in their business model. Like, isolated, it certainly seems strange. Particularly, ManTech just never really had big consulting ties. But ManTech isn't the only FSI suddenly throwing their hat into the consulting ring. Just a few months before ManTech kicked off its foray into the consulting world, we saw GDIT unveil its own digital consulting practice. And part of this is companies trying to boost their operating margin, but basically it's all just driven by the surge of agencies trying to better understand and utilize emerging technologies. So vendors are adding consulting services into their portfolio to capitalize on all this. Because your Booz Allens, your Deloittes, they can't handle all this excess demand, all these requests. These GDITs, these ManTechs, they're trying to get more involved with agencies across all levels. So that goes from designing these technology roadmaps to outright doing the systems integration work. And I mean, funnily enough, we've talked about it with like Washington Technology before. We're seeing consultancies adding systems integration capabilities to get in on this. So everyone's trying to get a piece of the pie. And ManTech is certainly interesting, though. So you mentioned their acquisition last year. ManTech had originally planned on organically building out its consulting capabilities, but it wound up purchasing Definitive Logic to speed things up, and it definitely has. Early in 2024, ManTech revealed that its digital transformation consulting practice would be collaborating with the new data analytics and AI solutions practice on helping agencies identify where they are in their respective digital transformation journeys and eventually helping them effectively utilize AI. And ManTech also debuted a Google Workspace practice to help agencies weave generative AI into their operations and utilize Google Cloud. Even like right now, ManTech and Google Public Sector, they're hosting tailored immersion workshops that highlight how Gen AI and Google Workspace can specifically help a client's productivity. So, I mean, there's definitely some positives for ManTech. And while I don't doubt that this consulting push is having some influence on deals, what catches my eye is that ManTech's marketing is not specifically calling out any wins as being due to their new consulting capabilities. It's just really concerning that the fluff pieces aren't hyping up the impact that the consultancy is having. And I mean, if ManTech is serious about being viewed on the same level as Booz Allen down the line, they're going to need to keep working closely with Google Cloud. They're going to have to expand their relationships with AWS and other key players to add key technologies into their platforms and have more relevant use cases. Like you were saying, I mean, recruiting, that is like the key for consultancies. And ManTech does have the financial resources right now. They can invest in upskilling, they can look for talent while taking advantage of the current M&A conditions to, maybe bring in another company like Definitive Logic, bring in more experts. I just wonder whether ManTech's culture, which it's always been more product solutions oriented, whether that will give the consulting practice the room they need to do what they do. I mean, we've been seeing a legacy defense prime like GDIT. They've been seemingly embracing its consulting practice, and ManTech, in theory, has an even better opportunity right now to really lean in if they want to.
And there's so many parallels to what we see in the commercial sector. I mean, ManTech sounds like sort of the cognizant of the commercial side of the IT space, and building a consulting practice. Yeah, it does take recruiting. I'm glad you brought up the funding, because you have to invest in it. And for a lot of companies that start out with a product-centric focus, making those investments in inexpensive people to do consulting is not easy. You mentioned Google, and so the alliances space, the ecosystem space, we get a ton of questions now about it. Like how do companies partner across the ecosystem? What makes for a high functioning alliance? And I don't know if the ManTech Google thing falls in that category. What kind of strategies stand out in terms of what people do well, what companies do well in the ecosystem? So thinking about both Peraton and ManTech, what is it that stands out about the way that they work with their technology partners? Or what do you look and say, okay, this is something they must improve on in the coming year?
So, yeah, John and I really do get a lot of questions from clients on like how FSIs are partnering with commercial tech and what stands out. It's so much so that last year we started collaborating with the cloud practice to do this annual report on how hyperscalers are working with FSIs, and I think that's called the U.S. Federal Cloud Ecosystem Report.
Yep.
Most vendors we track in the federal scene are just taking this vendor agnostic approach, and they're working with all the hyperscalers to make sure they're not walling themselves in and can support all agencies' needs, because different agencies use different platforms. And one of the companies that people are interested in is ManTech. Similar to GDIT, they are taking this largely vendor agnostic stance towards alliances, but they've recently been working more with Google. And I mean, we just talked about like the workspace practice. I mean, they've also been touting Duet for its AI capabilities, and
right,
that workspace practice, they're trying to show how AI can improve operational efficiency for agencies. And I mean, they're definitely working more with Google, but as a whole, they are vendor agnostic, and they're looking for consistent, loyal partners of all sizes that will, really just expand their cloud, AI, analytics, automation, systems engineering capabilities. And they're really looking for partners that will stand by them if they make any more strategic pivots as they continue to restructure. I mean, how effectively ManTech can utilize their relationships will be one of the biggest factors in whether they can move beyond just providing legacy services and capitalizing on this demand for emerging technologies. Peraton, they're also interesting. Since shifting their focus from the integration process, there's been a greater focus on fine-tuning partnerships. Like last year, Peraton deepened their relationships with SoftIron and UiPath to help agencies establish their own secure and customizable cloud platforms. And we've been seeing Peraton position themselves more as a go-to cloud services broker to better capitalize on agencies adopting an as-a-service model and winning deals like the Department of the Interior's $1 billion cloud hosting solutions contract to do so. So as Peraton continues to help clients develop their desired environments with third-party services, they're going to keep deepening their relationship with AWS and other key partners. And one other thing that Peraton's been doing that's caught our eye, and admittedly, they're not the only ones doing this, but since we're talking about that, Peraton are building relationships with institutions and organizations to nurture their cyber pipeline. Like they've recently partnered with DoD SkillBridge to offer veterans and cybersecurity apprenticeships and the chance to be hired full-time down the line. They also partner with Webster University to offer Peraton employees that want to become cybersecurity or data analytics experts with a 20% off discount on tuition. Plus, we've been seeing them partner with Dakota State to encourage people to get into cybersecurity. And this is all because there is a shortage of cybersecurity experts while the market has become increasingly lucrative. Like the Biden administration is requesting $13 billion for civilian agency cybersecurity spending in federal fiscal year 2025. And for context, the federal civilian cybersecurity budget was, I think it was like $11.3 billion in fiscal year 2023, and it's estimated to be somewhere around $11.8 billion for federal fiscal year 2024.
And traditionally, cyber has been an area where federally focused IT services companies have begun to branch out into the commercial space. And what we're seeing in a lot of the voice of the partner and the voice of the customer research we're doing is cyber is actually now the number one priority going into 2025. And I think it's interesting that Peraton would be reaching out to institutions like universities that are beyond the traditional ecosystem, because that's another thing that we see in all the ecosystem intelligence reporting is that the companies that throw the widest net and at the same time partner most strategically and intently are the ones that have been doing the best. All right, I want to hit sort of quick hit things here to wrap up. I want to get your speculation on IPO. I want to get your speculation on any changes at the top. I also want to hear, what you think about, because you mentioned this, a federal IT market slowdown. So let's end with that one, because the other thing I want to hear about is the ambitious M&A activity that I believe you said Peraton did, but I'm curious so let's go in order here. IPOs, CEOs, M&A activity, and the federal market slowdown. What's going to happen with each one of those in the coming year?
All right, so I guess we can probably combine IPO and CEO into one point there.
Okay.
So the biggest news to come out of Peraton recently is that Steve Shore succeeded Stu Shea as CEO, president, and chairman of the board in September. Shore was the CEO of Alliant Science and Technology before it was acquired by Huntington Ingalls in 2021. He took them from being this company built really just around systems engineering and technical assistance work for the Navy to being more technology centric. And most recently, Shore had been operating as a senior advisor at Veritas Capital. So Shea has been at Peraton since day one. So him stepping away is a massive deal. He made this mega integration process pass by so quickly and go so smooth. He's suggested in the past that an IPO is a likely exit strategy for Veritas Capital. And when you factor in all the other leadership changes going on at Peraton recently, like Tom Turgeson being appointed SVP and Chief Information Officer, I think it's indicative that Veritas is setting Peraton up to go public in 2025. And before Veritas announces that, they'll want to make sure Peraton can keep thriving in this evolving federal IT services environment and avoid any further setback like losing the IT GEMS task order.
Right.
They also want to make sure that they're taking their time to ensure the company is able to generate predictable revenue and profit streams. I mean, Carlyle Group did the same thing with Booz Allen back in the day. They had around 2.5 years restructuring this already high-functioning business before cashing out. And Veritas has had more time to optimize Peraton after these acquisitions and set the company up for success. Like, private equity always has an exit strategy. Right. So, like I said, we should probably see that unfold in 2025. Now, the federal IT market heading in the federal fiscal year 2025, maybe a slowdown's a bit harsh to say. I think John uses a different term for it. I view it more as definitely a deceleration in compared to the last few years of rapid growth.
Right.
We're seeing some agencies like HHS's budget contract. We're seeing some plateau. Overall, it's still an expansion over the previous year. The federal fiscal year 2025 compared to 24, the federal IT spending, but it is showing signs of slowing.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that market, is there going to be the opportunity for more M&A activity? Is there going to be consolidation among the different largest vendors, or no?
I would say we've been seeing a significant ramp up of M&A activity across the market lately. And I mean, what really kicked that off, what I would say is AFS's purchase of Cognosante back around the first half of the year. Mm-hmm. Then we saw Booz Allen come out and make an acquisition. I mean, GDIT made its first acquisition since CSRA in it was 6 years ago, so maybe 2018. And everyone's coming out right now with that, just adding on new capabilities. And I think that will continue into 2025 as everyone's trying to strengthen their capabilities with emerging technologies, and there's a lot of uncertainty heading into the Trump administration and this deceleration in federal spending. So everyone's trying to knuckle down and really make their case for why they should stay where they are.
Right. I think next time you're on the podcast, we need to do just the whole thing needs to just be around AFS, so Accenture Federal Services, Deloitte, and Booz Allen Hamilton, because I think there's a lot to talk about with how are they going to look different in a year from now, based on everything that you just said about what's happening in ManTech and Peraton and all the pressures in the sort of core IT services part of the federal IT service market, as opposed to the still very large and complementary consulting part of the IT services space. So next time you're on, that's what we're going to talk about. Last question before you go. You mentioned ManTech's marketing isn't great. It's basically what you said. How important is, and we're sitting here in New Hampshire, so maybe because we're however many, 700 miles away from DC, we don't have the same, we're not getting hit with the same advertising, but how important do you think marketing for these companies really is? Or are they marketing to individual buyers within individual agencies? Or are they marketing to talent to attract them? Or are they marketing to alliance partners like at Google to say, when it comes time to choose who you want to work with, you want to work with us because you know us through our marketing efforts?
I mean, speaking as like an ex-marketing kid, I think there's a lot of different channels that they like approach it through. So I think the main newsroom that they approach is just like primarily like directed towards investors. Like I just don't.
Right. Okay.
I just like don't see that as being a huge thing for alliance partners to like view it through.
Right.
But you know, they have like different channels and means of communication to reach out to them, each group. And so, you know, like channel partners, they have different material that's like really, I mean, guess partly on the newsroom, but it's really not. It's like there's like other parts of their websites where they direct that to them. And for like hiring purposes, you know, I really don't see all that much about it. I guess I was like recently writing about Peraton, and they are making this, like I said, the cybersecurity push. They are really leaning into providing more opportunities to people in cybersecurity. So I think they were looking to hire 200 interns this year. They were looking to double the size of something. I'm trying to remember what it was.
One of the practices,
And then it was expanding like the relationship with like community colleges and launching like a platform where workers can like transition to like a cybersecurity field.
Right.
And I think that's kind of just been like the focus for companies. Their just marketing focuses are more tailored towards like whoever they're reaching out, and they have like different areas for them, for those people to view them.
Right. It makes a ton of sense, and I'm glad you brought up the investors. I get caught up looking at the big four firms like the McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. My world tends to too much be focused on companies that don't have to worry about investors, and especially because you're coming out looking at the private equity side and then, you know, the potential IPO. You're right. A lot of the marketing for even the AFS and the Booz Allen Hamiltons and the others that are, you know, GDIT that need to continually appeal to the investor market too. Super important. James, thank you very much. Thank you. Really good chat. And we'll be back in January or February to talk about Booz Allen Hamilton, Deloitte, and AFS.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Next week in our Season 2 finale, you'll hear my colleague Alan Kranz, Cloud and Software Principal Analyst, speaking with Dr. Jochen Wolf, Global Head of Industry Analyst Relations at Software One, about building an analyst relations organization. Don't forget to send us your key intelligence questions on business strategy, ecosystems, and management consulting through the form in the show notes below. Visit tbri.com to learn how we help tech companies large and small answer these questions with the research, data, and analysis my guests bring to this conversation every week. Once again, I'm your host, Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst at TBR. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week.